Honourable colleagues, I'd like to add my voice to the debate on C-18. Senator Sejarah has done an excellent job describing the agreement and explaining why it is important for the Canadian and Indonesian economies. As trade agreements go, this one is relatively uncomplicated. And as with all such agreements, success will be determined by how businesses in Canada and Indonesia respond. If the bill passes, as I hope it does, that will be the easy part. The hard work will be in convincing entrepreneurs and business leaders to seek out the opportunities that this deal opens for the two countries. But this agreement is not just about trade. It is about how Canada positions itself in a world that is no longer organized around a single center of power. Insofar as Canada is seeking to diversify its economic relationships beyond the United States, Indonesia and the countries of Southeast Asia are priority markets. Prime Minister Carney has talked about a new foreign policy approach based on variable geometry. In practical terms, this means working with different partners on different issues, trade here, security there, climate elsewhere, without assuming alignment across all domains. By any measure, Indonesia is a major variable in the foreign policy based on variable geometry. Let me tell you why. For over a millennium, the powers in and around modern-day Indonesia have shaped the region and influenced global trade. Between the 7th and 13th century, the Sumatra-based Srivijaya Empire was the dominant force in Southeast Asia and was an important bridge for the transmission of Buddhism between India and East Asia. It was replaced by the mostly Hindu Majapahit Empire, which was based in Java. Majapahit rule was over by the 16th century, soon to be replaced by Portuguese overlords who were interested in the so-called Spice Islands of Maluku. They were eclipsed by the Dutch in the 17th century, who through the Dutch East India Trading Company monopolized the global spice trade for nearly 200 years. The spice trade was in many ways the first example of economic globalization, and a nascent Indonesia was at the center of it. Indonesia's strategic importance in the world economy has continued to this day. This is not a new story. It is a return to Indonesia's historic centrality. It is the fourth largest country in the world by population and the largest majority Muslim nation. As you have already learned from Senator Sejarah, Indonesia consists of 17,000 islands, 7,000 of which are inhabited. Most Canadians who have been to Indonesia have visited probably only two of those islands, Java and Bali. From east to west, Indonesia spans a distance of about 5,000 kilometers, about the same as the distance from Boundary Peak in the Yukon to Cape Spear in Newfoundland. Indonesia is strategically located on the southern edge of continental Asia and borders both the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. More importantly, it is one of two countries that control the narrow body of water connecting those two oceans, namely the Straits of Malacca. If you thought that a blockade of the Straits of Hormuz was a problem for the world economy, imagine the blockade of the Malacca Straits, which are important not only for the passage of oil and gas, but also container and bulk cargo vessels. Since independence in 1945, Indonesia has been an influential player in international affairs. And under President Prabowo Subianto, it appears the country is poised to play an even more important role in the years ahead. Here are just a few examples. Indonesia hosted the Asian African Conference of Non-Aligned States in 1955, more popularly known as the Bandung Conference. Bandung was Indonesia's declaration that newly independent states could shape world politics on their own terms, not as clients of great powers, but as collective actors. Indonesia and the other countries at Bandung were ahead of their time, but they correctly captured the sentiment of countries in what is now called the Global South in the early years of decolonization. This sentiment has intensified in recent years and has seen expression in international fora such as the BRICS and the G20. Indeed, Indonesia became a full member of BRICS in 2025 and is the only permanent Southeast Asian member of the G20. Senator Gierniak has already pointed out that Indonesia is also seeking membership in the OECD. Variable geometry indeed. Indonesia is a founding member of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN. This was back in 1965 when ASEAN was still a Cold War grouping with only 5 members who were concerned about the spread of communism from the war in Vietnam. Today, ASEAN consists of 11 members, including Vietnam, and is one of the most durable and effective sub-regional groupings in the world. While ASEAN operates on a consensus basis, Indonesia is seen by many as the unofficial leader of the group, with the ASEAN Secretariat located in Jakarta. Canada recognizes what is called ASEAN centrality in its Indo-Pacific strategy, which is an acknowledgement of Southeast Asia's importance in the changing world order. For Canada, this is not just a market, it is a gateway into one of the most consequential regions of the 21st century. In his Davos speech, Mr. Carney admitted to the double standards of the old world order and the emergence of a more multipolar world order, which necessitates a more independent foreign policy for Canada and greater diversity in our international economic relations. The countries of ASEAN, and Indonesia in particular, have long been aware of geopolitics, superpower competition, and the importance of strategic autonomy. As we embark on our own path towards greater foreign policy independence, we could learn a thing or two from Indonesia, which has championed balance and agency in its foreign relations. Some scholars describe Indonesia's international relations as promiscuous, which is not a word I would use officially for our own foreign policy strategy, but the idea of hedging our bets across different partners is correct. Indonesia and other ASEAN countries are often called swing states in the international order, and it behooves us to find opportunities to swing with those countries on issues that matter to them and to us. If Canada wants to be relevant in Southeast Asia, it must take ASEAN seriously, not just rhetorically, but operationally. Indonesia is an active contributor to global governance reform and should be seen as a vital partner not only in bilateral and minilateral settings, but also in the reform and renewal of the multilateral system, including the UN system, WTO, and international financial institutions. At the UN, Indonesia is an advocate for Security Council reform and greater recognition of a more multipolar world. In the WTO, Indonesia chairs the Group of 33, which focuses on smallholder agriculture producers in developing countries, and is also actively trying to revive the appellate body. Indonesia has also called for an increase in the voting power and representation of developing countries in decision-making processes at both the IMF and the World Bank to reflect contemporary economic realities. We may not align with Indonesia on all of these issues, but to ignore their influence on the evolving global architecture of global governance would be a grave mistake. Indonesia is a leading contributor to UN peacekeeping missions, with over 2,700 peacekeepers deployed across various missions around the world, compared to Canada, which has 0. 3 Indonesian peacekeepers were recently killed in southern Lebanon while on active duty. There's a tendency in Canada to rely on legacy narratives, such as our historic role in US peacekeeping, but we can learn some lessons from Indonesia about matching rhetoric with action. At its core, honourable colleagues, the Canada-Indonesia Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement is less about tariffs and more about building trust between the two countries. It is also a pathway to strengthening bilateral relations across other domains. In this sense, the agreement is vital for Canadians. The agreement is a signal for Canadians to pay more attention to Indonesia and vice versa. Whether it is research partnerships, student mobility, tourism, or cultural exchanges, We need more Indonesia, and Indonesia needs more Canada. Which is why I'm pleased to inform you that Senator Gignac and I will, with your support, reactivate a Canada-Indonesia Parliamentary Friendship Group. There have been a few Indonesian parliamentary delegations to Canada in recent years, and there is interest on the part of Indonesian parliamentarians for more regular contact with Canadian counterparts. You will be interested to know that the Indonesian Parliament, known as the People's Consultative Assembly, consists of two chambers. The House of Representatives holds primary legislative power, while the House of Regional Representatives acts as an advisory upper house focused on regional issues. Sounds familiar? Stay tuned for an invitation to be charter members of this parliamentary friendship group. Honourable colleagues, this agreement will not only boost trade and investment between Canada and Indonesia, but also demonstrate Canada's commitment to the region. This agreement is not just a trade deal, it is a signal that Canada is prepared to show up in the world as it is, not as it once was. I support sending this bill to committee as soon as possible. Thank you.